It's gonna be on the next regular agenda.
Brought this for no reason.
For the packet.
The other one's on the phone, right? The other's on the phone? Excellent, thank you.
Ben, how you doing? Good.
That's some honesty right there. That is some honesty right there. And then go like this. Because Paula's not here to help you out. Help do it.
No, she wasn't home. Bill to do away with the regional planning council. Did you see that?
What?
They want to do away with it, and there's a bill to do away with ARDA. Away with both.
Why?
World.
Wow.
World.
Wow.
You want me to do it?
Look.
Good.
Paula has one too. She got one from.
Call on you or call on me? Tell me I'm gonna start.
There's the L thing on it. That's good though. Very nice.
No, but it took me 2 days to recover.
Oh, I bet.
I couldn't move. I felt every year of my age the next day.
I'm gonna go ahead and call the Thursday, February 11th, 2021 City Council Workshop to order. The first two items on the agenda are our invocation and pledge of allegiance. Please rise. Bow your head and assume an attitude of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for all the blessings that you give us, you put upon our city. You wrap your arm around us and keep us all safe. We ask that you give us the words and the wisdom to do the people's work today. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Please make sure your cell phones are off if you don't mind. Just a couple of things before we begin. We are practicing the CDC guidelines and social distancing, and we're spread out up here. So we'd ask that you wear your face mask unless you're at the podium speaking. I won't wear mine because I talk a lot, I guess, but if you're comfortable, take it off while you're speaking. If not, feel free to leave it on, all right? The next item on the agenda is the citizens' open forum. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak? I'll start on this side of the room. No one on this side of the room? At this time, I will close the citizens' open forum. All right, before we get going, I just wanted to make a couple of comments. As I'm sure everyone is aware of the cyber intrusion that took place at the Oldsmar water plant. For those who may not be aware, and we're only going to talk a little bit about it. We'll get more of an update at our council meeting next week. Per request from the Sheriff's Department, the event is, of course, under investigation. We're working with the FBI and the Secret Service, and of course the Sheriff's Office and all of our partners at the federal level. And so we're going to be kind of limited, other than to say that an intrusion took place on February 5th. We believe that it was likely through a third party's software, a remote software that we use, that our folks in the field use, which is a pretty common practice. As most know, that when the intrusion took place, our observation protocols worked. Our operator saw what was taking place and was able to take immediate action and correct the tampering that took place with one of the settings. And so there was never a point where there was anybody that was in danger. The water alkalinity did not change. Had the individual not been successful in doing their job, There are other fail-safes that we have built into the system that would have absolutely alerted everyone long before it would have got to anyone's tap. And so that's the good news, right? The bad news is, and I've said this a couple times in some interviews, the bad news is that this is a reality that we're dealing with. I hate that it happened here in Oldsmar. Clearly, it's become a discussion nationally and internationally since it occurred in our little town, and in an odd way, we're leading the way. The FBI provided some guidance to some of the water plants, and that information has been made public by some of the reporters. And the only thing I would say to it is, if you see it, the FBI identified some deficiencies that we have in some of our cybersecurity. The good news is that we're already working on taking care of that. And like I said, our protocols worked. And so it's a much bigger story than Oldsmar. Well, let's just put it that way. And so anyhow, we're grateful to our staff who works hard and executes their job well, right? So that's all I'm going to say on that. And our city manager will have more at our council meeting on Tuesday. All right, so we're here today regarding economic development, specifically to work on the CRA and some of the property owned by the city. I like to call it the library property and the city hall property because it's easy to visualize, but it's really all part of the town center, okay? And so let me tell you how this is gonna go. We have some developers here, and one is actually in by phone. We intended to Zoom with them. We had a technical problem, so we come up with a plan B to make that work. These individuals are folks who have sent letters of interest on these properties. They've had discussions with what I might say the first round of vetting, if you will, with the city manager and assistant city manager and Tom, our city attorney. And so the goal here is to provide those developers with an opportunity to finally be able to show the council what concepts they have in mind. Mind you, it may not be the final that they're presenting, but it's an opportunity for them to get some initial feedback from the council who actually will ultimately vote on it. It's an opportunity for the public to see more about it. And so we'll get an opportunity to ask some questions, give some feedback, and then we're not ranking anybody. There's nothing like that taking place. What would happen in the next step would be they would then go back with that feedback and then essentially propose what would be their final proposal. And through the city manager, those final proposals would then find their way back to council, and council would then give an indication if they wanted to move forward, and at which point the city manager and the negotiations team would then take it. They go negotiate what we would hope would be a development agreement, a purchase agreement. And there's a few other agreements that go with those agreements, and bring it back to us, and we move on. All right? Any questions, council? Very good. Very good. This is such a good council, I swear. I've missed y'all.
It's been a while.
I've missed y'all this week.
Just been one
You've had a hard week, Mayor.
We've all had a hard week this week.
I hadn't had a hard week. I had a great week.
I will say this, that our city, and I'm gonna give some props to our city manager, our assistant city manager, our clerk, and everybody who, and the water department and utilities. It's been a trying week. It's been one that has been a bit overwhelming at times. But I have to tell you, it doesn't seem to matter what gets thrown our way. Everyone rises to the occasion, and I can tell you as mayor and as your council, we do appreciate it. All right, so let's do this. Let's go ahead and start. We're going to start with the library property, and what is it, the Odeon project that's being presented, and I will call on Mr. John Buse to take the podium. The floor is yours, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay, I'd like to start with a backstory about this project. Last year, I was in a budget meeting in this chamber, and I saw that there was a black box theater in the capital plan, maybe, I don't know, 3-5 years out. And I was working on this parcel as a whole from a development standpoint for residential, and it got me thinking that there was a building on site that kind of fit the bill of a black box theater. So what you'll see today is a presentation that kind of evolved around that being the central core of the redevelopment of the property. So I'll show you some images and we'll get into that and get some questions. But the backstory was this: I heard somebody say it, 3 to 5 years seemed like a long time. We've had an incredible turnout the past 2 years with Suda and the group. It seemed like a long time, and I was driving by every day. I see this building, and that's how this kind of got connected. So it was really a matter of luck that I was here at the budget meeting to hear about that, because I didn't know what a black box theater was. So the Oldsmar Odeon project, if you'll flip slides, we'll start with, for those that don't know, because I didn't, what the heck's a black box theater? So I went back and Googled it and started learning about it. You'll see some images here. It really is a flexible performance space with simple, unadorned design. And there's a picture there of the Murray Theater, which is attached currently to Ruth Eckerd Hall. It's fairly new. It is incredibly simple, but really exquisite in terms of the execution and how it operates. So we learned a lot there. So that's the black box theater for those that don't know that are listening in. I am now educated as well, as you are too. So next slide, please. So I like to nickname things. It's my jam. So I was looking at other words for black box theater. Didn't roll off the tongue as much as I'd like. And I came up with Odeon, doing some research. Odeon is a kind of theater in ancient Greece, smaller than dramatic theater, for all the purposes that our current cultural arts provides. So hence the name Odeon. It doesn't have to be that, but that's where it came from. So you'll see me refer to that name today. And if you don't know what Odeon is, now you do as well.
Black box, Odeon, we're learning a lot.
Right. The common person will call it a theater, by the way, but that sounded boring, and Oldsmar is not boring. So next slide. So imagine and the idea here is, imagine the theater that we had at the turn of the century in 1918 was a little derelict, and we're going to restore it. That was the theme I was trying to go with here. Just because it's the building I'll show you in a minute is currently not very adorned with theater-like details, there's no reason it couldn't be, with some creative thinking. So here's some visual images of some small theaters around the country to give you an idea of what a historic theater could look like. Very simple, not ornate or crazy, and I think would fit in with the town. And from the backstory, we would want it to look like it had been here a long time. So those are those 4 images, just really random images of what I consider to be scale matched to what we're talking about. Next slide. So here's where the rubber hit the road. There's a Beamworks building there that's been there for 30 plus years. The city owns it. It's part of the larger parcel of 7 acres. It is shaped like a theater. It has high ceilings like a theater, has steel beams like a theater. It wants to be a theater. I know it does. It's got big overhead doors for loading docks, and it has all of the bones. The verdict's still out whether the building is going to be perfect for structurally, but for a minute, pretend it is, right? Just for today, pretend it is for a minute. And it's the idea we're trying to say is the anchor of the project. When we get to some further slide, you'll see how it anchors the project in its entirety. So that's where the idea of the Beamworks building connects the dot to the black box, et cetera, et cetera. So next slide. So now what we're calling the Library Theater District, see the play on words there again. This is the library on the right side, the blank slide. That's the library in the parking lot. The left side of the site is the 7 acres that you all are aware of. It's had many different versions of development brought to you. This particular one revolves around 96 units of townhouses. It's zoned for 105, but I think 96 is about appropriate, 96 to 98 units. They are The trick here is all the units on front, which front St. Pete Drive and State Street, are of the live-work variety. So we know those are the 2 floors, the second and third floor are the townhouse, and the bottom floor is a live-work unit of hopefully of the variety of small offices, cafes. During today's times, people want to work from home. There's a large area that we could convert. So there's a garage on half the downstairs, and the other half is a live-work unit. Similar in nature to the my live-work building at Washington and State. So this is the whole parcel to show you with special consideration for the neighbors on Arlington, of which I am one of them. You will see no breakthrough to that site to get onto.
No School Street?
No School Street. And we've also pulled all the buildings as far up as I can, well above the setback, to keep it as far away from those buildings as we can, to try to pay attention to those neighbors, mainly on each side of School Street. So there's currently a pool building back there. Whether that stays there or not, I don't know, but that's a low slung building, 1-story. And all of the vegetation and natural state of that parcel, which is School Street, and then where the ditch runs through, is currently designed to be not touched, besides maybe mowed, but it is no trees removed, nothing back there. So visually, we're trying to protect that neighborhood from this development. As we know, this development is zoned already for these units. There is no zoning requirement. There's currently no variances. Someone's going to develop this. I hope it's us, because I'll take special care to make sure the architecture is of excellent quality and that the neighborhood, including my own, is paid attention to. But I think we have a better shot at mitigating some of those concerns than maybe a guy that's going to just clear cut the place and build for money. Architecture is my priority, money is second. You guys know this from Hayes Park Village. So that's a little background of the whole parcel. I wanted to show you a few ideas about how the project could look on the live-work side. Those are the numbers 6, 4, 8, and 6 that are up front. That's the unit count of that building. Those 4 buildings are what I'm going to show you today. I'm not showing any of the interior buildings today because I don't have the builder picked. A national builder would be developing the actual product quickly, much quicker than I could. So Devin Rushnell and I from Hayes Park are involved in this project to get it ready to go, architecturally speaking, so that a national builder could do so. So I don't have the product to show you on that yet, but I assure you it will look good. Next slide, please. So these are some examples. This is a project in Beaufort, South Carolina. These are live-work units. So downstairs is what I would consider to be a more small town feel with signage. You can see the sign up above. There's some porches to break up the elevation. These are concrete block downstairs, siding above to match the architecture of the inside of the unit, of the inside of the project. Next slide. Here's some more. You can see some pout porches. Again, I don't expect a large restaurant here because the units aren't big enough, but we have plenty of space for office, small office, and even cafe, lots of different choices here because we have 24 of the 96 units are designed to be like this. So that's a quarter of the project. And the idea here is the front on St. Pete Drive would look like we've been praying for years that we have a downtown. It would have that walkable feeling, wide sidewalks. You could have a cafe out there. It would have all what you could say we've heard for 5 years now of preaching to the developers to make it walkable and scalable. So these are just some more possibilities of how it could look. And again, I encourage some feedback here to make sure I didn't miss the mark. So I'm trying to go fast to leave some time for questions. The next slide is just a plug. Thank you, that's a beautiful Hayes Park Village. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that place. We're very happy at how it turned out.
Behind the blue house on the left.
Yeah, the guy in the blue house, you guys know him, right next to the red house.
We get calls about him all the time.
So that's my quick backstory, so I'm hoping there's some questions that I can help answer.
All right. Thank you. Very good. Very good. All right.
Thank you, John.
Let me do this. Let me start down with Councilmember Norris.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. You know I love the art sculpture, got to say that first. So the 24 of the 46 units are live work. So that means that the person that would be purchasing one of those 24 units, that it would potentially be somebody that has their own business because it's all one thing. So they'd be buying the 3 stories, the 2 residentials on top and the garage and the space for work. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. And our current zoning allows that person that owns it to rent it out as well.
Oh,
But the idea is they would own it's a fee simple townhouse, so that means you own the property under the building, so you'd own all 3 floors. And I would envision, frankly, some people not putting their shingle out and making it their literal home office or theater, but they could rent it out as well. They couldn't sell it, they couldn't separate the unit, but they could rent it out.
Okay, gotcha. I'm not seeing a lot of green space. Is that just because it's not on the plan, or like, is there any common green space area? Is that like a pool in the back you had mentioned?
Yes, there will be some green space in the center core behind the units. Remember, this property is in the CRA and has the possibility for off-site retention. So if there is any small retention, that would also be green space. But yes, there is no amenities besides the pool building and probably a small dog run, and then some green space between the units. But you're right, it is more of an urban core type feel. There won't be a large, vast swath of walkable trails.
Right, but you do have, like in Hayes Park Village, that is a beautiful blue house and a very nice wreath there. You do have quite a bit of open space with trees and landscaping. So are you visualizing something similar?
Yes, in a small scale, yes, for
Small
sure.
scale,
Yeah, there'll be
right.
something there for the community, but there won't be like you consider a jogging trail or anything like that. It would be much more on the Hayes Park density-wise, compact.
I love the Black Box Theater. That's it for my questions. Thank you.
And you know what I'm gonna do, just so we establish some rules, if it's the pleasure of the council, we'll ask 2 questions each. That way, because we probably have overlapping questions, and we'll continue to go around and until we accomplish this or until we run long on time, all right? Councilmember Saraki.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, Linda answered most of my questions that I had, but I have one question that she didn't ask. Do we have a price for the unit with the home and the unit downstairs for retail or rent? Do we have a price point?
They will be for sale, Mr. Strachey. They'll definitely be for sale. National Builder would sell them. As far as price point goes, they would set the price point, but I know currently the average price in Oldsmar on new is $210 a square foot.
Right.
And these are they're currently about 2,000 square feet of, again, these are the interior units, not the live work. The interior units are about 2,000 square feet. So I would do the math approximately in the probably the high 3s. They start, depending on the premium of the view. A lot of the units on the back face the pond and maybe it's not a pond, but it's a DOT retention, so there'll be some pricing, but I would say in the high 3s. And then the live work units would be more than that because the square footage downstairs is converted into air-conditioned space.
Well, as you know, I love your stuff, and I think this is a great idea for the city of Oldsmar. Thank you for your hard work. That's all I have, Mayor.
Oh, all right, great. Councilmember Knapp.
Did you say we're just doing questions right
A
now and
couple
then
questions?
then comments
I think
after or
so,
discussion?
yeah.
Okay. I have a few, so maybe we can circle back, but the first one being based on my experience, as you know, with Hayes Park Village, it looks like there's an ample increase in the amount of parking for this project, and I'm sure you probably know, learning from prior projects. So that's actually kind of more just a comment. It looks without counting it, it looks adequate, especially factoring the theater in there. The one question which I think you may have mentioned was, I guess it's the southernmost part of the property, but the top part there, is that, you said a pool and a pool house?
It's currently, please remember that site plan is fluid in terms of that's
Okay.
just preliminary, but right now that's shown as a pool house and a little cabana with a bathroom and a pool.
Okay.
But yes, that's what's shown in the back.
All right, and then just one final question. Was that like a little kind of cut through at the intersection of St. Pete Drive and State Street at the southwestern corner of that drawing, northeast?
No, if you want to back up a few, that's another good point. That is, I envision that to be a corner monument. I'm not showing it now, but that space is like a plaza to me. I think on our corner at the gateway to the downtown, it needs to be something, so that's separated. So if you look at that gap in the triangle, it's a couple, there you go, between the 6 and the 4 on the left-hand side. That big gap there is going to be some kind of pediment, some kind of tower, I'm not sure yet, but it needs to be substantial to identify where you're at. So that's what that would be.
Gotcha.
And
I think I was a little off on the orientation, that being the one that's cutting off at the angle, that is State Street.
Yeah, we're not exactly sure, but that will be something special. And to answer your parking, right now there's about 50% more parking than required by code. In addition to all the units have parking in front of the unit, unlike Hayes. So there's a ton of parking.
Good. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. John, really exciting stuff. Who would own and operate the theater? What's your vision of how the transaction would go as to the Black Box Theater? Is this like a sale leaseback? Does the city own it? Does some third party? It's gonna be.
Can I
cut
defer
out
to
of it?
Al to answer that?
Sure.
It's the cities.
So that portion would be
We
like
would-
a green space.
Well,
cut
I've
out
got
for
some
us?
more to that, so I'll
Okay.
finish up, but to answer your question is it's the cities.
Okay, so then my second question is, I know it's great to be theoretical, and just for today, the Beamworks building works, but I'm really excited about this concept of a black box theater, so what if the Beamworks building doesn't work?
Well, the good news is we have lots of options because the site's designed for less units than it's zoned for, and we take out the black box theater and relocate it into a new spot. It doesn't change the density or the financial deal of the project, in our opinion. So we've got
Okay.
2 or 3 places to put it.
It's the prerogative of the chair, because this goes to your question. I'm going to ask our
Thank you.
city manager to
So,
share his thoughts.
call it good news and bad news. I'll give you the bad news first. We have had the building evaluated, and I think I shared with you that when John approached us with the idea, we kind of said we weren't sure the building was going to make it. And in actually coordination with both John and Devin, we both reviewed the report, and I've concluded that I'm not going to recommend keeping the building. Building needs to go. Now, that's the bad news. Here's the good news. Again, in coordination with John and Devin, we think it would be a really cool and exciting idea, instead of doing that, to carve out what I'll say generically is the southeastern portion of the diagram you're looking at, and have them build us a theater. We negotiate the deal. We don't convey that part of the property. It'll change its design somewhat, but they're amenable. They build us a theater. We put it right on State Street. We have the frontage. It's not in the middle of a residential park. We can use the back parking from the library and have a great city asset that's highly visible and could generate a whole lot of enthusiasm on St. Petersburg Drive. John and Devin have been great to work with, and they like the idea too. So we were approaching you guys to say, if you guys bless that, that's what we'll base the negotiations for the whole thing on. We think that's a much better answer.
Yeah, and the reason this just came about, the presentation was done, we're telling the backstory, but there already is a site plan that you haven't seen where the 6 is on the front next to the library. That sixplex has been changed out in approximately the same square footage as the Beamworks building to, again, a historic-looking building that's been there forever, but it'll actually probably be integrated through the breezeway at the library, so now it's an extension of that, not that building, but extension of that public space. So it actually, from a design standpoint, is superior to the first one. I just didn't want to try to confuse the issue, so.
Sorry, I didn't mean to let.
No, I'm glad you brought it up. It was gonna come up soon.
We were planning on getting there, yeah.
Gonna have
It's
to
a
come
great
up soon.
question.
I think
That's a
that
great
was,
question.
I think that was 2.
Yeah.
But that's where it fits, and it fits fine, and it looks great. And we still, by the way, believe that this Black Box Theater or the Odeon building is a central asset to the developer and the people that want to live here. So this is not just a municipal project, it's part of the core of the project itself. Like it's the reason for the project. So whether it goes where it is now or it moves over by the library, it doesn't change that dynamic at all. And just makes it easier really to design from scratch, which is always easier.
Very cool. Thank you, John.
Councilmember Norris, any other questions?
I'm just glad Katie asked that, because the only thing I was wondering was how are we gonna get any kind of visual frontage with it being in the back and the sculpture being in the front, so I like that idea.
Okay, Councilmember Strachey?
Nope, I'm all set. Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, I didn't go.
Yeah, you.
Get your first 2.
How'd that happen? All right, I do have a couple of questions. What do you anticipate, and I recognize that this is concept, right? But if you're spitballing, what do you kind of anticipate the overall cost of the project? When you look at it, it's a X dollar size project. What's X look like?
I did this math and I don't remember what it was. Devin, you do quick spitballing?
Are you thinking on the cost or on the revenue?
On the retail, I think it's a $40 million project is my recollection.
Without taxable value.
Yeah, I mean, that's $40 million, including the black box, so,
Okay.
but that's a spitballing.
All right, all right. Okay, you already talked about parking in the Black Box Theater. I'm very excited about the Black Box Theater. You and I talked about this a long time ago.
We did.
And,
I called you first.
And I'm like, brilliant, right? And I'm gonna give some props because, you know, the history, and we're not there yet, we got a long way to go, but the history of that came, you're never gonna believe the very first person I heard say Black Box Theater, and we thought it was such an exciting idea. It was our city manager.
That guy?
And you know how much he loves spending money on things like that. So I was, and it was motivated by Suda's dancers, right? So it's exciting. So understanding the process as well as that you do, and let's just say from a point when we were to get to a development agreement that might be approved, of course, you know, in this process, because it's property in the CRA, we have that stop 30-day window anytime we do a deal. So kind of keeping that in mind, what would you envision kind of a starting point, a timeline for you from the point that we have a deal negotiated and we're hit that 30-day window where we could sign?
I need to answer that in two parts. The first one is going to take us at least 90 days to do all the engineering and the design work for road, streets to make sure this is all viable, drainage, retention. There's a lot of work and money to be spent before we even give it to our national builder partner, who then would take 6 months to run it through, at the most, 6 months to run it through their process to get funded. So to me, that's a 9-month process minimum. Maybe we can do it shorter, but I doubt it. So just to give you an idea, 3 months for us, 6 months for them.
So
And that is to close, 9 months to close on the property.
Okay, all right, and then I would assume at that point, the project's funded, the goal, and you've got engineering work done. I would assume that the next day you want to try to start moving as fast as you could. Is that fair to say, or is it to say it's a 9-month till closing, probably means we don't turn dirt for 3 months afterwards?
I'll defer that question
I'm
to
not trying to
Devin.
nail you down, but I am trying to nail you down.
Yeah, I know. I know how you work. This is recorded, so I get it. I'm gonna.
Yeah, they would certainly break ground immediately after, and it'd be about 6 months of site work development. And how long would the theater take to build, do you think?
Probably about the same.
About the
Yeah.
same?
So the builder partner, once they close on the land, they're already gonna be ready to mobilize. They're not gonna then bid it out. That part of that 6 months is for them to get it bidded out, get it approved, get it funded, get it closed, and then I would hope within weeks, days, probably not weeks, days, that you'd have to see equipment out there because they now cost them money every day that there's no house.
House, yeah.
Very good. That's my 2 questions. Councilmember Knapp.
2 more, and then I'm done. And maybe you had already said this, John, and I know this came up as a previous proposal for this property, as far as building height goes, are these all units going to be 3 stories, or will there be a mix of 2 and 3?
Currently, they're designed for 3. It's a great question. This property is in floodplain. So the units that are interior to the project are currently 3 stories, but the caveat here is they will not be brought up. The downstairs units, all the interior, are all below flood because it's a garage and a front door. So they're allowed to be below flood, so it's 3 stories net, but otherwise, if another developer, they're gonna have to bring in 8 feet of fill. So essentially, we're doing the same thing. So there are 3 stories, but from existing grade, not the 8 feet of fill that the project will require if that first floor had to be above flood.
Okay, and then the second one you just kind of touched on as far as garages. All the units will have garage, and then it'll just be some front-facing and some rear-facing?
No, all the garages are front-facing. In that context, you have to see the architecture. So nothing changes. As a matter of fact, the units that are interior are the same exact units that are on State Street. By design, they're just, the downstairs is converted because the building's lifted up, so that live work part of the garage can then be converted. Same unit any other point. That's the national builders. We had to kind of use their model. So we can't, unlike Hayes Park, I can't have 42 different designs.
All right, that's all I got.
Vice Mayor?
Cost and the height issue were my questions. They have been asked. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good. Anyone else? All right, I got just
6 more?
no, just a comment, and I know it's really already designed that way over there. I just can't quite remember the width, but I mean, obviously, one of the things that would be important in the design factor is that the sidewalks are those super wide sidewalks. In part, I just mentioned it because we love the idea of sidewalk cafes, right? And we're actually kind of wrestling with an issue right now over at the Galleria, because those sidewalks, frankly, are not really wide enough to accommodate that. And our code does allow for dining on sidewalks within the CRA. So I'm assuming that's something that would be taken into account on those units. In your experience, so what would those work units be in terms of size, right? So if I bought one of those units, or someone to, the unit downstairs that faces out to St. Pete, give me an example of what the commercial space looks like kind of on a square footage basis.
It'd be about 500 to 600 square feet. So it's gonna be about 20 feet wide and 30 feet deep with a bathroom. That's all that would be down there. And they'll all be almost all the same. The in units are gonna be able to have some bump outs and things, but generally speaking, that's the square foot range.
And is there the ability for a potential investor, or either through a collaboration, to buy multiple units to suddenly have and combine the downstairs unit to have 1,000 square foot space? Or is that not possible based on the way that it's deeded?
That's a great question. I've thought about this. The only way to do that is to have multiple units owned by the same party. Because again, we can't split the ownership by using the live work codes that we're gonna use. It'd be the same ownership. But yes, the holes can be knocked in the walls, and they can expand if they had 2 or 3 units.
That they own on their own?
I honestly don't know the legal, if people got together and formed a partnership, I don't know how that's gonna work, because the city codes don't address that. They address who owns the unit. Being Mr. Trask question we probably should formulate to ask better. It wasn't designed that way, but I recently were thinking about that, because right now that will give you a coffee shop or a cafe that is probably not a restaurant. Yeah.
Or a pub?
Yeah, exactly. Well, the pub here in Oldsmar is only about 600 square feet, I think, gross.
Is that it?
Maybe, well, no, that's taking out the kitchen. So not much bigger than that, though.
Right. Well, the Black Box Theater has multiple uses to it, right? Of course, we have it for our local events and that type of stuff, but it also has a lot of other implications, whether it's, a comedy night or meeting space, or, there's just a whole opportunity there, which is a real deficiency that we have.
Yeah, imagine the Black Box Theater is a 50 feet, maybe by 80 feet room, which is bigger than this, that's open. And every time they want to use it for a theater, they actually conform the space to whatever their show they're doing, both chairs, stage, et cetera. It's really highly manipulative in terms of how you use the interior space. I will say, this came up yesterday too, as I was walking the parcel. The marketing department for the city won't like it, but remember the cafe that was designed in the library space? Mm-hmm. Yeah. With the theater there, the integration there is amazing. Like, for my visualization.
There goes marketing and communications, right out.
That's sitting there, if that is a future use, it gets become bigger, that space was designed for that.
Well, maybe we could put them over at the rec building, because that might be, no? Sorry. All right, we're digressing.
I just want to put that on the record.
One last question I have. So do you have an idea in terms, like, is there a style type name that might be applicable, or that you have in mind? I know it's probably more detailed than the concept, like for the facade, that type of look.
Well, the images I've shown here are mercantile coastal, which for us is, we are a coastal community. So, and that's same with the interior units as well. But there you go. That is really a hybrid, but it's technically a coastal style. It's got siding, right? The colors aren't pastel, so don't be confused by that, but they're muted. Generally the trim is dark and the body's white, but it's of the coastal. But I will give you some precedent on that so we can use that. We don't have this precedent, I don't believe by definition is in the CRA, but it is in the CRA by image. So that's probably
not listed, but we show a picture of it.
Well, yeah. So that's the trick is I need to make sure that it matches the verbiage of the language. But this fits in terms of the style, but unless you tell me otherwise, by the
Well,
way.
and I think, I have a lot of faith that, the whole theater concept, it's taken on into the whole area, which is exciting. All right, any other questions? All right, I'll open the floor. Thank you, sir. I'll open the floor for any comments.
Oh,
I'll start with the Vice Mayor.
thank you, Mayor. I'm very excited about this concept. I think that some density in that area, some high quality density in that area, specifically townhouses, I think are very appropriate, sort of transitioning from the homes on Arlington and a little further down on St. Pete Drive up that way is fantastic. I love the idea of sort of integrating it with the library. Again, a transition sort of from library to then back Black Box Theater to housing. The theater in general, I think, is a fabulous idea. Multi-use for everything from, city staff meetings to, Ms. Suda's latest production to, renting it out for a wedding. Who knows? It's very exciting to me. I have seen, as we all have, the quality of Mr. Buse's work and his team. And I'm very excited. I'm curious as to the financials, which I'm sure will come back to us in short order. But very excited.
Excellent. Councilmember Knapp, any comments?
Just a couple. Piggybacking off of what the vice mayor said, be a nice place to have annual planning conference, probably. Seem to have struggled in being able to do that or just have a place to do it. And then I just love the idea of bringing our theater program to a proper home, and really looking forward to that becoming a reality. And as soon as I saw the Odeon name up there, something popped in my head, which maybe could be one of the first productions at the Odeon, called An Ode to Oldsmar at the Odeon, for alliterative purposes. And that's all I have.
Very good, very good. Everyone's creative, feeling artistic.
Yes.
All right, Councilmember Norris.
Oh, I think it's beautiful, John, and we do know the quality of your work. I too, of course, everybody knows how much I love art and culture, and I love that you made the comment, and also Vice Mayor and Councilmember Knapp, that there's so many different uses that we could use that building for. Comedy, all kinds of, we could have art shows, we could have, galleries. There's so many things we can do. I do also like that you decreased the density from 105 to 96. I like that. And it just seems like there's a whole lot of thought. And of all of the things that have been proposed for this library's thought, we had an apartment complex, we had a hotel. This is so much more beautiful than either of those. No offense to the, apartment people and the hotel people, but I think this fits Oldsmar. I think that it really does. So I like it.
Very good, Councilmember Siraki.
Thank you, Mayor. John, I just want to say, I remember when I first got on council, we talked about you designing the Hayes Park Village and working on that project, and that has become a beautiful property for the city of Oldsmar. And this project that you have designed, one thing I really enjoy is the new library theater district. I love that sound for our city, and the concept and your ideas and your experience of what you've done for our city. I think this is a great project, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much. That's
Very
it,
good.
Mayor.
The only thing that I'll add to it is just kind of interesting, and, listen, I love the idea, understanding that we still have the economics to get through, no question about it. But that's a need we have in this community. So I tend to look at things like the rest of you and say, it's an asset that we have over there, we're fulfilling a need and accomplishing the goal of some more density down in the town center, and it seems to check all the boxes. And I'll tell you something, just a little interesting tidbit, and there's a handful of people who still remember this, but the original, I guess the last community theater building we had, do you know where it was located? On that property. It was actually where the library is. But it was that same area, so there is some history to it. And we tore that down. But nobody was, I wasn't on council.
We didn't
I wasn't on council. Anyhow, all right, thank you very much, good job. All right, we're gonna move on. Now we're gonna move over to the City Hall property, and the first one up is going to be the Woodfield Development, Woodfield Group. Woodfield? I think you're going to Prime.
Are you going Prime or Woodfield?
It's Woodfield.
Prime presentation.
Prime.
We
Prime
wanted
is
to go,
first.
we wanted to
Yeah.
go to Woodfield first.
No,
Prime.
Prime
Why?
first.
Oh, it's, yeah, we can
But
go to.
let's do Woodfield
okay.
first.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Council. Ryan Studzinski with Woodfield Development. I'm gonna keep the mask down as we kind of switch between the other folks that I have with me today. Real quick, how do we get the slides to change?
There's a click on.
There should be a.
Gotcha.
It's touchy. Don't click it more than once.
Got it.
Very sensitive.
Well, thank you all for letting us come here today to talk to you about what we have proposed for the City Hall site. We're excited to present our concept to you. Just jumping right into the presentation, what we want to go over today. Obviously want to briefly touch on the team that I have here with us today that we've assembled, dig into details of the project itself, and then drill down into a bit more of the vision for the architecture, as well as the outdoors and the continuity that we're envisioning for the overall site.
By the way, all of you, if you didn't know, this book, it's got the visual for you.
Briefly introducing Woodfield Development. We are a Carolina-based multifamily developer. Roots from both North and South Carolina. Started in 2005. We are active in Charlotte, Raleigh-Durham, Charleston, Greensville, the DC metro area, and more recently we've expanded into Atlanta and Florida. Over our genesis as a company, we've successfully completed over 50 multifamily projects and currently have another 15 in construction and another 20 plus that are in pre-development across our locations. Wanted to just briefly highlight one of the projects that we just recently finished down in West Palm Beach. This site was actually a former City Hall site for West Palm Beach that is a mixed-use project. We completed 250 apartments there, along with roughly 20,000 square feet of retail commercial on the ground floor. Adjacent to the site is also a autograph collection hotel, as well as a public park on the waterfront and some additional retail and commercial. Project has been very well received by the community down there, and wanted to just highlight our experience working on both public project as well as mixed use. And just briefly highlighting some of the other mixed use projects that we've successfully developed. We've got a project under construction in Charleston called Morrison Yard, 380 units and about 25,000 square feet of commercial space. Sienna Park is a completed project in Arlington, Virginia. That was roughly 40,000 square feet of commercial. Blinks at Ray Farms in Charlotte, North Carolina. That was recently finished, and that project also had about 45,000 square feet of commercial mixed-use space. Woodfield prides ourselves on being a best-in-class apartment developer. A lot of folks call themselves Class A or luxury apartment developers, but we pride ourselves on always delivering the best-in-class asset in whatever market we operate in. And just wanted to highlight some photos here as examples of some of our finished product, and would absolutely expect to deliver the same kind of product here for the town centerpiece. Then briefly want to let the other folks that I have with me quickly introduce themselves, give a little background, and then we'll jump into the project.
Mayor and the council. The name is Christian Arkendo. I'm with Charlotte Brock Architects. This actually is our 40th year in business. We are a Maitland, basically North Orlando-based firm. And we are working currently in like 28 states across the country. Majority of them are like southeast of the country. I want to say at least half of our projects are in Florida. So we have very good knowledge what's happening, you know, in the west side, and the center, and the north, and even southeast side of it. And really we pride ourselves of working with our developer and really carrying their vision, but at the same time negotiating, you know, with the city and carrying their vision as well. So, you know, we just want to make our buildings or project be part of the community more than just plopping things. So we're definitely here excited to present this to you and kind of share a little bit more about what, and especially hear you out. We do have a couple of projects in there, and this is really just a highlight of what we're actually working on. We have some mixed-use development, retail, first floor apartments on the second floor. These are a little bit more higher intensity, probably what we're gonna see today, but these are just development that we are working closely with the city and the developer to actually carry a vision through. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman and Mr. Mayor. Let's see. My name is Andrew Garrels with Land Design. We are based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. We have around 200 employees across the country, offices in Denver and Dallas, here in Orlando, as well as our main hub in Charlotte. I come from the Orlando office, and I can tell you that our specialty especially out of the Orlando office, really focuses on the multifamily, that whole idea of live, work, play. Creating those places that really matter. That's actually our motto is creating places that matter, that people want to go to, that can congregate, bring their dogs, do whatever those active activities can be within that space. So a couple of highlighted projects that we've worked on, the Romero Bearden Park in North Carolina. Again, it's probably a little denser than what you're going to see today, but just the idea of bringing people together in those common places really helps not only define the space, but also define the community that's within it. With the City Hall project property, you look at Oldsmar, and it's completely converging on City Hall. You've got Park Boulevard right here that comes up and terminates right at City Hall, and to have a facility right here that can just showcase the whole community and bring the whole community together, it really has a lot of opportunity. So we're very excited to be a part of this project, and hope you guys enjoy what we're presenting today.
Thank you. I love the work that y'all did on that one project right there.
Thank you.
Premier Bearden Park,
Yeah,
Charlotte.
it turned out fantastic.
I actually spent time looking at some of the different stuff online regarding it. And
Fountains.
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 We heard something about fountains.
You guys do fountains. Yeah, no, it's gorgeous. It's a really gorgeous,
Attractive feature.
it's a space that I think you guys did very nice work on. Anyhow, go ahead.
Without any further ado, let's jump into the project itself and what we've got proposed. Briefly, just want to highlight the fact that your town center is designated as a community activity center with Forward Pinellas, who's the guiding, planning, and future focus body for congregating all of the various municipalities throughout Pinellas County. I believe there's upwards of 25 different jurisdictions throughout Pinellas County, and then obviously unincorporated areas. And based on that community activity center designation, it allows up to 90 units an acre for multifamily, up to 150 units an acre for hotel use, and a 3.0 floor area ratio for mixed use intensity. What we're proposing is underneath all of those allowable density intensities, and certainly think it's appropriate use of the designation as a community center with its strong focus and location. Just wanted to highlight real quick further that location and point out the existing park and pedestrian infrastructure that you have here. This site really becomes the center of connecting all that. We think there are certainly opportunities to further enhance that connectivity with what we've got proposed here. In terms of the overall site plan, we are officially letting you know that we are willing to be the master developer for the overall site. So as what we're showing here would be us stepping up to take the reins for the overall development of the entire parcel. I will tell you, we are not hotel developers, but we would look to bring in a development partner that would help ultimately execute on that in what we would call a phase 2. That being said, we would still look to plan for all of that in both the requirements for parking and max hotel keys at 125 units, and look to incorporate that with what we feel is an appropriate partner on the hotel side that would be able to utilize the parcel that we would effectively make pad ready for them. In terms of the primary portion of the project, we're proposing a 5-story mixed use with 316 apartments and roughly 25,000 square feet of commercial space. And as you can see here, a bit more graphically, this is kind of how the massing would lay out on the overall site. Obviously, retaining City Hall in its current fashion, proposing a nice City Hall park there immediately behind us and adjacent to our proposed project. And as you can see, we're looking to concentrate that commercial component along State Street. We also would work in our residential amenity portion. Also there is highlighted in blue along State Street as well, which has a very similar commercial feel to it that gives you that nice overall continuity throughout the State Street and a great pedestrian experience. With that, we'll get into some of the more particulars of the architecture and our vision for the project itself.
All right. So in here, we really wanted, let me figure this one out. Okay. So in here, what we were trying to use as the inspiration is really a timeless architecture. We went through the code and really found that there is a modern eclectic as part of the styles proposed for the area. And we definitely wanted to go into, let's look at traditional materials, use them in a little bit more contemporary way, but at the same time, keep it classic, elegant, something that is not gonna look old in a year or two. So that really moves us in a way that doesn't get us too trendy, I want to say, bright colors or anything. It's more elegant, it's more representative of what the town is. So you'll see a base of bricks, some durable materials versus a little bit, at the pedestrian level, more storefront, a lot of openness from the building, connecting with the pedestrian activity. And then higher up, and we'll go with a fiber cement panel and then muted tones or darker tones to create contrast and elegance, but at the same time, bring balconies and bring things that people will actually enjoy looking south and east, actually on west, on the sunsets from here, from this point. This is concept render number 1. This is the corner of State Street and Washington. In here, there's actually a mix of different uses. On the left side of this massing, we have the residential amenities. On the right side, we have what we're calling the corner eatery, a potential restaurant. The restaurant at that point is actually, the massing is actually pushing in, so we allow outdoor seating and activate the street. And really what we want to do as part of the whole architecture is, respecting the heights of the buildings across the street. They're really 2 stories in height. So we're creating this mass out of brick or on a darker material that is actually 2 stories in height to kind of relate a little bit with the buildings across the street, but at the same time, obviously create a break in the building so it doesn't feel like you have 5 stories of building at the street. So not only our building is actually kind of, I think it's 12 to 15 feet away from the street, so you have a very wide, pedestrian activity in there. Then further up, you definitely have the apartments that are a little bit more back from that face as well. So we're definitely trying to work with the mass and kind of mitigate the intensity of the project on this side of the State Street. Now on Tampa Road, it's definitely a 5-story building, which that scale and that traffic definitely can't take a flat 5-story building. Another things that we're trying to do in here is breaking the mass. We have this, very long building, so we try to actually break it in 3 different masses, so it doesn't feel like you have 250 feet of a single facade. So at that point, you can barely notice it, but on the side, you definitely notice that we have 2 corridors that are going to be private, but those 2 corridors are really creating some relief on the facade and bringing more green space. Although there might be semi-private/private, at the same time, it is greenery and it is space for people to congregate. I'll move quickly to the other one, and this is another of the ideas that we're bringing here to the table. It is this being potentially a park right behind City Hall and having 25,000 square foot of retail. We're seeing how the park is not really limited to the area. This potentially could become a festival or a place that you can close a portion of the State Street and actually activate the whole row with the park and make something more eventful. Again, this being on Tampa Road definitely showcase, there's something going on in here, and it's more of a, we don't only want the community to come and look at this project, but in special events, maybe every 6 months or whatever, depending on what the structure is, we want outsiders to actually look at Oldsmar as well, for this to become an activity center as well. So in this image, we're looking into like a food trucks occupying the street, and then just people just meandering around and really creating this area kind of like the hub. And again, you see the pedestrian activity and the pedestrian massing a little bit darker in color, creating a base, but then the apartments are kind of faded on the back a little bit, just trying to mitigate the height of the building. And with that, I'll leave it to Andrew. Thank you.
So within this site plan, Christian mentioned it earlier, we tried to step the buildings back. You've got 1 2-story buildings across State Street, so we really didn't want to overwhelm either the pedestrian or vehicular traffic as they go down State Street. So stepping them back really does 2 things. It lessens that impact, but then it also allows for wider sidewalks, more pedestrian area, and then more outdoor seating. I mean, we live in Florida, so you might as well have a lot of outdoor dining. Everybody loves it. And with this recessed look, you can see some of the gray areas along State Street. You can see how far they're set back, and it allows for that interactivity with the outdoor dining, and then a nice pedestrian promenade along State Street. Some of the other things I want to point out on this overall site plan, we maintained the on-street parking as well as the surface parking within the property. And then we did designate parking within the structure as well that wraps, or that's inside of the multifamily development. The hotel in the corner, again, will have some surface parking along it. But then really we wanted to focus on the park itself to the north of City Hall. And what we really want to do here is we're showing a very sort of simple concept, but the idea is to just get some understanding and some needs of what the city of Oldsmar is looking for. We've shown some great opportunities for active and passive recreation within this within this space. Like I said earlier, City Hall really is the center of the city. You guys have done a great job with naming town center. You know, it really, everything comes here naturally. So to have a space that the community members can really take pride in, enjoy, walk their dogs, sit out, relax. On weekends, we included a band shell that you can have small events on. The big open lawn there really gives a chance to, you know, have a picnic or listen to music on the weekends. But then also, like Christian mentioned earlier, the opportunity with State Street between within our property really has the opportunity on weekends to close that down, bring in farmers markets, you know, carnivals, food truck plaza or food truck weekend sort of thing. Really gives a great opportunity to not only bring in the community members, but also outside, you know, surrounding communities. So we did include some of the amenities that we thought were important. The shade sails really can become, you know, they serve two purposes. It's a form of art, but then it also provides shade. And then the interactive fountain, we wanted to make sure we included that because we know it was special to you, Mr. Mayor. So, you know, they are very big. The shallow sort of splash pad or fountain, and then with the added element of music, bringing that into play, you know, that's another form of art. And it really, with the lighting and the music background, everything, it really can turn into something special and something that the community members can be proud of. So just a couple other little things. The area to the right there where we're kind of looking at, it's pointed to playful. Well, we've done a lot of playgrounds over the past 15 years of my experience. And what we're finding is kids are actually getting away from the traditional playgrounds. And we're starting to include berming along the perimeter of the playground. And the kids are actually having more fun rolling down the hill than playing on the playground. So that area to the right, it's fantastic,
About
right?
the refrigerator box, not the toy that came out of the box.
Yeah, so including some of that berming and just having the opportunities for kids to have creative play rather than a structure, and giving them the chance to learn on their own and explore on their own, I think is really important. Some of the other features that could happen, you know, a butterfly garden, maybe a community garden for, you know, vegetable growing, stuff like that, shared spaces. But really, we're looking to get the community's reaction to some of these things and how we can really make it their own park and their own piece of land. We mentioned connectivity a little bit earlier too, and I think it's, you know, I keep going back to City Hall really is the center. You've got great connections already down Park Boulevard to Olds Park and Veterans Park. And then the trail is right there too. So this really creates a great trailhead opportunity as you maybe develop Park Boulevard further and increase that connection strength. So, yeah. Some of the perspectives, just this is kind of an overall look at how the park could really function. You can see State Street there on the right and the opportunity to block that off just east of City Hall, all the way to the, is it Washington, to the east. And, you know, just imagine farmers market tents lined up there or a small carnival, activities like that. You really have the opportunity, but then it also is at a pedestrian scale where it doesn't feel overwhelming with the building set back there. Looking at some of the, you know, really pedestrian scale activities that we could do, some of the organic dynamic shapes of site furnishings and using warm elements taken from the building architecture to really tie that in nicely. And I think there's some opportunities to connect the architecture of City Hall and bring some of those elements out into the area development around the buildings. This one's focusing more on site furnishings. You know, getting away from the traditional park bench and trash receptacle every 100 feet, 200 feet, looking at outdoor swings, I've got a project in Orlando right now that's looking at these musical swings where you have a row of 4 or 5 swings that when they come through, it actually makes a tone, and they're different tones. So if you get 4 or 5 people on there, it actually makes music, and it's so cool. So little things like that, I think, really can enhance this place. And then finally, some of the other special features, food truck nights, obviously the fountain, as more integrative and interactive that we can get that, I think would be definitely a big feature. Some of the band shell nights, the concerts, small venue type things, I think really can bring people together.
And just to also point out, we wanted to just highlight the fact that the pictures on the bottom, that's Boxy Park, which is in Orlando, a little over an acre in size. A lot of flexibility there in the types of events and activities that they host there. And then the picture in the bottom right is actually Sparkman Wharf in downtown Tampa, about an acre, a little over an acre in size. And that's comparable to the park size that we're contemplating here.
Yeah, Boxy Park, I don't think they were actually planning on Boxy Park being a temporary measure at Lake Nona Town Center. And it's been so successful, it has become a permanent structure and part of that long term. So. Oh, I got with it. So then finally, this is again focusing more on the special events. Weekly farmers markets are huge. Food truck nights, Thursday nights. I live in Apopka, and those are multiple hundred people to 1,000 people up every single Thursday are showing up just to get food trucks and especially nowadays safely community involvement. So the opportunities for these really are strong in this site. So.
Thank you very much.
Very good. All right. Before you sit, we'll go ahead and see if there's any questions. I'm going to start with my vice mayor this time. And we'll go with the same format if that suits everyone. Very good. Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Turning back to pages 12 and 13, which show kind of the site plan. Sorry, you don't have to, well, okay, we did it already. The 850 spaces in the garage, is there room for the city to lease some of those spaces? Who owns those spaces? Are some for the hotel? How many are for each residence? Talk to me about the garage.
Sure. What's contemplated there is right now 100 spots that would be available for the city based on discussions with city staff, and the balance to support the needs for the hotel, and the apartments, and the commercial.
This green space behind City Hall, who owns and maintains that?
Well, we're proposing that remains with the city and as a public park.
So you guys, your team would develop it according to whatever site plan we like or what have you, and then?
Yeah, just to expand upon that more, we obviously today want to present potential ideas or visions for how that park could come to fruition and how it could be activated, but ultimately, specifically for the park element, we would offer the services of land design to help facilitate ultimately what the vision for council and the rest of the city might be, and to ensure that there's nice continuity with the overall master plan and land planning for the site. But we would ultimately look to for the city to pay for that in whatever fashion that they deemed was appropriate based on the level or extent of installation that they wanted to do there. Alternatively, there's a way we could certainly try to negotiate that with the overall financial negotiations, but from the standpoint of, we don't know what you want, we wanted to present ideas of what we think it could be, and we're happy to facilitate that design with land design, and also happy to facilitate the construction at the same time as we would develop the balance of the site.
Very good.
We're doing a
Councilmember Knapp?
similar situation over with the city of Winter Park. They have a public piece of about an acre, acre and a half, similar size. We're doing a design charrette with council members and community members, so that there's a direct input from community for this public space. So we would intend on doing something similar for this acre and a half up there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Knapp?
Thank you, Mayor. For the commercial areas, you have kind of the eastern and the western sections of it. Am I seeing it correctly on these renderings, which obviously I know that they may change, that there could be the potential of one rooftop area tied to the commercial on the western space, and then either one large shared or two separate spaces on the eastern commercial block of the building? Is that accurate?
Yes, it is accurate. Well, one of the things that we're trying to break the mass was bringing the commercial forward. So that creates opportunity for the residents to have like a rooftop amenity as part of the, the whole design of the building.
So it'll be residential rooftop amenity or commercial?
Yes, it will be residential. Today, it will be residential just because the whole safety, security, and how mitigate all that. It's really the corridors of the residential are the ones connecting there.
Okay. And then the other question I had is, and I'm sure you guys have probably done this with other projects, just with wrapping residential around the garage. How do you deal with mitigating sound generated from the activity in the garage from the residents? I mean, other than just baffling or insulation?
Yeah, so essentially, we're required to have a minimum of 50 SDC rating in between the public and private areas. So we have the parking garage, which is like a massive concrete, which is the best one for airborne sound. And then from there, you have 6 foot of corridor and then another wall. So it's definitely, you have 3 walls in between the units and the apartment and the parking garage, so.
Great.
Good question. Good question. Councilmember Sirac?
Thank you. Most of them were answered, but I do have one that I want to ask about the hotel. Have you considered doing something else different besides a hotel? Did you think of anything in that area with that piece of property?
We did not. No, particularly based on the fact that up until very recently, we were continuing with the expectation that there was already a hotel group committed here and then a subsequent one. And we certainly think the corner is appropriate for a hotel, but we are by no means opposed to looking at an alternative use there if something like that would make sense.
That's all I had, Mayor. Thank you.
Very good.
Okay, so, yeah, I had a question about the hotel as well. So you said that you would partner with a hotel company, and if you do that, would the construction happen simultaneously? It says future hotel, so you would do your development and then partner with someone to do the hotel? Is that what you were envisioning?
Sure, just to clarify that further, as council probably knows, the hotel market and prospects for new development are not great at the moment. But what we would look to do is to selectively market that site to what we deem are suitable development partners. That hotel is their expertise. And the timing of that, I can't say for certain what that would be yet. Obviously, economics have to play into that, but it's hopefully we conveyed with the caliber of the projects that we historically build and what we're proposing here. We're going to be very particular about who we would partner with there and what the kind of flag that we would be looking to put there that's commensurate with what we're looking to deliver as well.
Okay, that makes sense. So you would be purchasing all of that property except for the City Hall Park property in the whatever agreement that you guys come up with, because we would be maintaining, but then you would help us with the concept plan for the park, a concept plan plus construction for whatever the community gets together and we decide to put here in the park. Is that correct?
That's what we're proposing, yes.
Okay, those are my 2 questions for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. I think you answered this, but the current green space proposed behind City Hall, that's approximately an acre, is what you said?
It's
acre
between
and a half.
an acre and acre and a half, depending on
How far?
how you
far
just
west?
delineate what
Right,
the extent of that is and whether either there's an opportunity to scale back the the surface lot that's on the western side of City Hall as well, which could potentially further enhance that opportunity.
In the plans, and I'm looking currently at page number 20. So in the plans, and this is kind of it almost sounds like 3 questions, but I promise it's
You're the mayor, it's
part A
okay.
and part B. So that, you would be, I guess, coming, if you went from the fountain east, essentially right under where it says play, those units right in there are envisioned to be residential, correct?
Yes, I
Yeah.
believe so. I don't know if I'm getting locked out here, or I'm just
That's all
being
right.
smart about the control.
It looks like on
One
from
more, I
page
think.
12.
Page 12, it looks
Yeah, it
blue.
shows the apartments on, yeah.
Yeah, stop there. So essentially what you're looking at is, as you come along State Street and you were turned into to head to the park, that's commercial, and the commercial then stops, I would assume, past that second corner, as if you were headed to, going into the parking structure?
Yes, the little jog that you see where activate and enter, when it makes a turn to the north, yeah, we would transition from commercial to residential there.
And then going into, that is part of, I noticed from both sides, it looked like you had entrance and exit to parking, to the
Correct.
parking structure.
Correct, yep, those
Okay.
would be your access points for the garage.
All right, and then past where it says active, for lack of a better word, once you get past that, essentially, now you're going to residential. Even on the ground level, it's residential there?
Yes, yes.
So you wouldn't be sticking with the theme that you are on the corners where you've got the commercial being ground level and really the residential starting, I guess it's up 2 stories, the setback that you've designed in it, correct?
Correct, yeah, and maybe the bird's eye may
Blue's
help
top.
a
Oh, well,
little
'cause you got
better
parking
there
there.
with that. Yes,
I see.
And
Yeah,
just
that's
so
a good
that the commercial space takes 2 levels of what would normally be residential space, just based on the clear heights for the ceiling that we need to incorporate.
The reason I asked the question is, well, I'm gonna finish the thought, because the reason I asked the question is because if you look at the design of the park, and I think it's probably, I would say a consistent theme that you'll find from everybody up here, and that is the green space, of course, is very important to us. So now you have potential green space that's going to be envisioned as public land for the citizens going up to someone's apartment, which I would think would be a problem in the design, just as it related to, the distinction of commercial, public versus private. It's just an observation. So-
Sure, yeah, we would potentially handle that in a couple of different ways, but the easiest way is oftentimes just buffering with landscaping and so forth. Those ground floor units would likely just have a porch patio, but there would not be any connectivity with a sidewalk or anything, so the residents would, and it would likely be elevated a little bit as well from.
Along this line, before I move on for more questions, to my point, personally, I wish there was more retail there, and that it made it even a clearer divide between private and public. So that's just a feedback thing. All right, Vice Mayor.
How many was that?
I think that was like 2 3/4. Hold on, our city manager would like to comment.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to clarify something that may be on council's mind because of Councilmember Saraki and Councilmember Norris's comment. It's not really requiring a defense. I just meant that in the negotiations we've had so far, I appreciate the fact that Woodfield was willing to consider anything expanding to the corner. I told them specifically that the council expected that to be a hotel. Obviously, where we were in negotiations, they were very much in tune with. So I only say it this way because Councilmember Saraki asked if they had contemplated some other use of the property. If we were looking for that, I would hope that you'd communicate to that because they might prefer it. He said more than once that they're not hotel developers, but I had told them throughout the entire process that council expected that to be a hotel.
That's a great point, and maybe under comments, that would be the point where somebody could say something to that effect. Good point. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Couple questions, 2.3 or so. Tell me about your company and how you function. Do you build these apartments and then sell them? Do you stay and manage? How does that work with Woodfield?
Sure. We are a private developer. We are also for-profit. In terms of how we decide on the asset and potential disposition, it's really a function of the particular project and how we ultimately capitalize it and just where we may see an opportunity with the project. But we're opportunistic in that regard, but we are true developers in the sense that we would ultimately hire a third-party general contractor that would construct this, and then we hire third-party property managers to operate the project. In terms of whether we ultimately sold it at some point in the future, that really wouldn't impact ultimately the operation or really have any visibility from a public perspective once it's built and leased up and operating.
Okay. The overall cost and I know it's like a ballpark figure and how this would play out. Are we talking TIF dollars? Is this I guess it would be a question number 2 and a sub question.
Well, that might be more a negotiation
True.
question.
Okay, can I ask the overall cost question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So just the question 2, but without the sub question.
Well, I can't speak to what a hotel might cost to develop, if it is even a hotel ultimately that would go in that corner. Thanks
Sure,
for that,
but this-
by the way. But in terms of the
Minus the
primary
triangle.
project that we're proposing, 70 million?
That was my 2.
Councilmember Knapp.
Thank you, Mayor. Could
And
you?
I'm going to ask everybody to pick up the pace, just so that we still have ample time left for our last one.
I just got one.
problem.
Could you just describe in kind of an overall explanation of what the residential amenities are? Because I see a pool outside, but what is the darker blue, what is that all composed of?
Sure. I'm not sure what slide that was. I'll see if I can quickly go back.
12.
Number 12 kind of shows the colors.
So the central part facing State Street and then kind of adjacent to the eastern commercial area.
Yeah, so we would have a leasing office, obviously, to market the property for future residents. We would have various club room, internet cafe, exercise facility. We're doing a lot of different creative things with our clubhouses in terms of just offering flexibility for our residents to enjoy those amenities as much as possible, and conference rooms, some things of that nature.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember
Do you have
Strachey.
any other questions? The
Councilmember
questions were
Norris?
answered.
So they're gonna be apartments, so they'll be rentals.
Correct.
Okay. Just personally, my company is involved in a lot of this as far as what we do, and it's gonna kind of be like the one in downtown Tampa that has the internet cafe and the theater and all of those things, all of the amenities for the rental for the apartments. So it'll have you're envisioning all of those amenities for the renters
Correct.
in that. Okay.
Correct.
I think Katie asked the other question that I had, because I get one more question, right?
Yes, go right ahead.
Let's see, I really like the 2-story, where it has 2 stories that goes up. I like the visual. So in those Residentials, those would just be third floor units. And wherever it is only 1 story, that's wrapped around, like the mayor had said, those are gonna be 3 stories or 5.
So-
It's 5 stories, so 2 stories, it'll be 3 stories of apartments where you have the 2-story soaring ceilings. Then the other ones will be 5 floors of apartments.
Correct.
That's correct, okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Very good. Let's see, let's go back to the parking structure. And so, granted, this is always open for negotiations, I understand. Certainly the city's participation in parking structure and that type of stuff. But is it envisioned for you all that the parking structure would be something, of course, that you would construct, whatever the financial arrangement would be, end up negotiated, but who would have how are you visioning the final ownership of the parking garage? Is it a scenario in which your group would own it and we would have a life lease on X number of spaces? Is there no commitment on your thought process?
Right now, we would propose to retain ownership of the project and have cross easement access.
In the 100 spots that you referenced for the city, is that intended to be 100 spots to facilitate parking for our city staff, or is it for the green space and whatever else there might be?
Yes.
Yeah, so, well, the reason I asked that is because we asked about parking. So you're saying that,
I honestly, Mayor, would more likely want to defer to Al or Felicia on that question.
Okay.
Because we were kind of going back and forth in terms of.
well, let me
what that
ask it a different
quantity-
way. So for the 316 residential spaces, how many spaces do you need?
I think your code actually, and the town center only requires 1 per unit. We look at it on a per bedroom basis, so we've got upwards of 475
Okay.
spaces
Yeah,
allocated
that's
for
good.
units.
That's good. So it's all incorporating what I was thinking. Let me see. This. I think I'm good. Anything else, Vice Mayor?
The remainder of my items are more commentary than question.
Comments, that's all.
One more question. Would you consider, in your floor plan or your site plan, would you consider just taking over not putting a hotel there and adding more apartments or maybe more space for coffee shops? Would you consider that? Would you think that would be a better plan? I'm just trying to get a feel for what you have to say about the hotel, not having it there.
I mean, we certainly could revise the plan and incorporate a slightly larger project without the hotel. Yeah, absolutely. In terms of whether the hotel makes sense there, I certainly think that it can, and we certainly feel like the overall site plan has nice continuity, and to the extent there's easy opportunity for hotel guests to ultimately use the garage and have that transfer with still some sort of covered porte cochere or something to that effect. I think functionally it still works well with the hotel, but if it pleases council for us to consider other options there and eliminate the hotel, we're certainly
We'll include it
willing
in
to
comments.
Yep.
All right.
look at that.
Any other questions?
I do have a few more. Okay, so to clarify the parking question, so if the hotel does happen, there's plenty of parking for per bedroom spaces for you guys, some for city employees, and some to lease to the hotel.
Yes, just to quickly address that, since we don't have a hotel developer in tow with us at the moment, we would look to just program for the overall site and whatever appropriate things we had to take forward to Pinellas County for approvals. We would look to just incorporate that with that max of 125 keys and assuming
Okay.
some other ancillary parking needs and restaurant, that kind of thing.
Okay, and my other question is you guys you're the master developer, you're gonna build it. Who is gonna manage the apartment aspect of it after you're done building it?
We hire a professional third-party property management company. We have
Okay.
strategic relationships with.
Yeah, the vice mayor asked that question just a minute ago.
Oh, when
They
I was in
do.
the bathroom, the volume is really low in there.
All right.
Sorry.
That's all right. Well, I'm gonna, if you have any other questions, because that was asked earlier, and essentially, you know, as professional developers, they do third-party, you know, depending on the project, right? All right, so let's go to comments. Let's try to keep it under 2 minutes. All right, I'll start with the vice mayor. Thank you, by the way.
Thank you, Mayor. Fantastic presentation, folks. I really appreciate the clear research that has been done, the knowledge of incorporation of Pinellas County information, density, the mixed-use ratio. There's obviously been a ton of research here. I think the wrapped parking garage is a very exciting proposal. Taking out those two triangles for City Hall and the hotel. If it doesn't work, okay. I'm flexible, I'm only speaking for myself. I'm flexible to a different piece of the puzzle than a future hotel. I'm not married to having that specifically there. I really like the design element of having the stepped back. I think it complements across the street and what's existing across the street, so they're not looking at, like you said, a 5-story building. I think it makes sense. I really appreciate the knowledge, really, and the whole picture analysis. I just want you to know that it felt like you really did your homework on Oldsmar as a city, just the radius, 5-mile radius of our city, because we are smaller than, some of the developments that you have examples of. But it was clear that you really meant to incorporate all of it. I really appreciated the presentation. I'm interested in looking at the economics.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, echoing comments about the hotel, certainly would love to see any alternatives for that northeastern sliver of the land. As far as what the mayor had already commented on about the commercial area or lack of additional commercial area fronting the park, I think that's something worth considering as maybe a swap from what is on facing Washington and taking that over there. Just a thought. And then again, you guys really did show, you did your homework. That impresses, I think, probably all of us up here, hitting on a lot of the tones. You must have been watching several of our recent meetings, even up to last week, because we brought up the thought of closing down the street and doing all kinds of stuff along State Street. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilmember Knapp? Yes.
All right, that's okay. I can be napped today. Thank you, Mayor. First of all, the presentation, the product here that you presented to us is fantastic. The work that you have done in other communities is very impressive. Very, very impressive. The thing that I'm having a hard time with, and I'm going to be upfront with you, our city is a little city. I'm used to, I moved here in '95. Tampa Road was 2 roads. We're building, we're growing, I understand that. But this is a massive, massive project. I mean, this project is very big for our city. So I'm having a hard time with that, and I'm just being upfront with you guys. I think you're qualified to do this project, and personally, I would love to just you to do it and get rid of the hotel and just take the whole project and keep it all incorporated in one beautiful design that you've designed for us. But in a nutshell, I'm just having a hard time with this massive, huge thing being right next door. It's just so big. But I know we have to move forward. It's the way things are going. But just thank you for your time. I don't know what's going to happen, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilmember Norris?
I too appreciate the presentation and the thought and the research that's gone into this. And I actually want to visit this one in Texas. It's beautiful. I like that. I like that you are going to be the master developer of everything and you can be involved in the other aspects, and that you're flexible about whether we put a hotel there, or whether we're going to have our rooftop bar, or whether, whatever the council decides that in the future. I like that. The outdoor space, you touched on a lot of things that are very contemporary now. The musical swings, when you brought that up, that has brought so much economic impact in the one in West Palm Beach that people don't really realize that things like that do. So I appreciate all of that. I too am looking forward to the economics. And I also like that you're mostly southeast. I think Christian or Andrew said that you're mostly in the southeast, but you have a lot of projects in Florida, so you're very knowledgeable about the market. So, yeah, that's my comments.
Very good. I have a few comments. One, I personally remain committed to the hotel, just as for the record. And the reason why, I'll tell you, there's two reasons why. Number one is the opportunity, the only opportunity that we have as a city to have accomplished two things that are missing. One would be a higher-end hotel. We don't have that in Oldsmar. And we constantly get asked about it from the business community, that they have to send them to Tampa, maybe they send them over to Innisbrook, and so it's deficient. We also don't have the proper indoor business meeting space, square footage-wise, and that's always been envisioned in that hotel. And also, of course, when you talk to our citizens, the feedback on rooftop bar. You know, the eyes light up, it adds that sparkle. I think it would complement what's being done there. So that's just an FYI. I like what I see in the project. I too have some concerns about the number of units, but I will tell you that I think your design work, frankly, alleviated quite a bit of that concern. I can see it fitting in. You know, the area's been designed to buffer down, and that still is accomplished in that design. So I also, and I mentioned it earlier and I'll mention it again, I think adding, and I know you historically, as I understand it, have not been very excited about the retail side of this, but that is at least for me personally, would be a deal breaker. Yeah, I'm more excited about it if there is more retail in it. Because we need that walkability, and without it, you know, it's essentially residential. But I think we appreciate your presentation, and I think it was very nicely done. So we thank you. All right, I'm going to move on. At this time, we're going to go on to our last presenter, and this is the one that we are operating remotely. And so I'm going to go to Felicia, I think, who is doing that. And if you want to go ahead and make sure our guest is still on the phone. Do we have you there?
We're still here. Can you hear us okay?
Yes. All
Yes.
right, Felicia, go right ahead.
Hi, I have the first slide up.
Okay. I'm hearing some echoing as I speak, so just bear with us. Hopefully we'll walk through these technical difficulties, if any. So you all should be seeing a slide that says Old Smart Town Center with some imagery.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to present our ideas once again, and in particular, a special thank you to Felicia for helping coordinate this forum remotely on such a short notice. My name is Meyer Abbo. I am the founder and principal architect for Prime Design Associates. Jim Dupre is joining me, who is the Director of Acquisitions for Prime Group. We have a new revised site plan, which we'll be showing you shortly, that was developed taking into consideration valuable comments that you have made throughout our participation in this process going back to 2019. Although this is a new site plan, we really wanted to respect our original project concept and goals, and those are worthwhile reviewing before we go to the site plan. Next.
Go ahead.
Yes?
First and foremost, we wanted to create a project that contributes to the development of a vibrant Oldsmar downtown core by developing buildings that serve the community and that have a sense of human scale. By creating attractive outdoor spaces for people to connect and interact with one another. By building a community that is organized around a central square where residents and visitors can gather, play, and celebrate. By prioritizing the pedestrian and encouraging walking through connectivity of uses. By designing buildings that face and define primary streets while defining courtyards and squares. And lastly, by developing a mix of uses in a design approach that supports individual and civic growth with hospitality, residential, and city hall venues incorporated into it. Next.
Go ahead.
This is our new revised conceptual site plan. You can see the existing city hall, residential hotel, and components of the mixed-use project. We felt that it was important to design a project with a series of smaller scale buildings that could better fit with the adjacent neighborhoods that help define the arterial streets, both State Street and Washington Avenue, that have a smaller scale, while at the same time, and perhaps even more importantly, creating large outdoor spaces for both the residents and the Oldsmar community. Some of those spaces include a Central Park Square venue, a residential amenity courtyard, a City Hall Park venue, and smaller, more intimate spaces for each of the project components. There are also multiple inviting entrances and arrival points from State Street and Washington Avenue that lead visitors and residents to the different project components. In terms of the project components of the mixed-use project itself, there are two residential buildings. One is at the center of the site, and the other is at the intersection of State Street and Washington Avenue. The larger residential building at the center is defined by a residential amenity courtyard, and both buildings were designed to primarily be what we call double-loaded corridors, while still providing some liners for the proposed parking garage, which is centrally located and provides access to all of the different components, the apartments, City Hall, and the hotel. We really felt that it was important to minimize the impact of the parking garage in the overall site plan and to provide as much surface parking as possible that is really playing off of the open spaces that can be created. We respected the idea of the hotel. It is important to us. Prime Group is a developer that, as you know, has extensive experience with residential as well as hospitality and retail. And we've taken the original idea of the hotel and shifted it to be consistent to what the original site plan from the city envisioned at the corner of State Road 584 and Washington Avenue. That allows for the hotel component to really have a presence along Tampa Road so that it could be visible, but at the same time really allow it to enjoy what we think is really the heart of the project, what we're calling the Central Park Square. The hotel would be on the first floor, primarily public spaces, of course, the lobby of the hotel, restaurant, with outdoor seating, and a pool deck that is really at the center of the square and the open space, and enjoying and overlooking that space. It would, of course, still maintain the originally proposed hotel rooftop, which includes the bar and lounge. Next. You should be seeing a slide that highlights in yellow the large outdoor areas that were created and that the project can enjoy as a result of the design and its various pieces. The residences in the hotel can enjoy the Central Park Square, which is really the lungs of the project, the residential courtyard in the building in the middle, and then really City Hall enjoying its own enclave to the left of the site with a central park square of its own and potential plaza in the corner along State Street. You see the yellow highlighted area expanding to where we're proposing parking because we believe that these venues can easily be designed with landscaping and hardscape so that green spaces could bleed into hardscape spaces. And while providing functionality for parking in normal uses, they could be closed off for special events and have interesting venues that Oldsmar residents as well as town center residents can enjoy. Next.
Okay.
Just a brief synopsis of our anticipated uses at this time. We have the 6-story hotel. Currently, we're envisioning approximately 130 guest rooms. The 2 mid-rises are 5-story mid-rise buildings totaling approximately 230 to 240 apartments. And the parking garage is a 4-story parking garage of approximately 285 spaces at this point. It's possible that we could increase those spaces, but again, we're trying to keep that footprint as small as possible so as not to drive the design of the project. We currently have on-site surface parking of approximately 203 parking spaces. Our total on-site parking is approximately 488 parking spaces, with on-street parking of plus or minus 55. That gives us a total project parking of approximately 547 spaces, give or take. Next. This slide shows a preliminary mapping concept from Washington Avenue looking northwest. And you can see the arrival points from State Street and Washington Avenue, as well as the large open spaces that are created by having the various pieces of the project. Next. Again, a preliminary mapping study, now looking from State Street toward the northeast. You can see here vehicular access points to City Hall are maintained, and access to the parking garage is provided from that surface parking that would be servicing City Hall. Next. Here you'll see a view looking from State Road 584 South, and you can see the residential buildings with the double loaded corridors that I mentioned and minimizing those single loaded corridors around the parking garage. Next. This is our last mapping study, just showing the hotel arrival from Washington Avenue. We think that this is an important arrival point for the hotel itself, as we want people to be able to, as they see the hotel, turn in, and when they do, really see the main entrance for it and the project, which really leads you into the central square and open green space amenity of the project. Next. The next series of slides are just a small sampling of reference completed projects that Prime Group has developed. And Jim, I'm sure you can speak to this a little bit more than I can, but you are familiar with Prime Group and the fact that they design, develop, own, and manage all of the projects they do. This one in particular you're looking at is the Artivation Hotel. It is an autograph by Marriott Hotel in Sarasota, Florida, and we're showing it to you as an example of one of the numerous hotels we've done that has a rooftop bar and lounge, which is the idea here, and especially at the corner where this would be located. Next. reference example of multifamily apartment community. This is a residential community in Daytona Beach, Florida, called One Daytona. I think last time we presented, it was just getting started under construction. It is now completed and all leased up. The project was developed by Prime Group in collaboration with NASCAR. It's been quite successful, and I think it consists of over 250 apartments. There's a second phase now that is on tap and that we're working on that will basically double that. Next. This slide is an example of apartments and retail that we're currently designing. It is, in fact, the second phase of the One Daytona project. This is one of several buildings that will be part of that. And this is what we're thinking in terms of potential look and feel for the residential buildings. It's a more contemporary look. We had previously proposed a Florida vernacular typology, but we feel that perhaps going with a contemporary look, especially in this location, may be the way to go. But we are definitely open to either. We think that what's important really is the site planning and the quality of the spaces that are created. Next. This is another example of a project, an aerial view of a project that Prime Group completed in Homestead, Florida. It has a single-family community, multifamily residential, commercial, office, retail, and 2 hotels, a select service hotel and an extended stay hotel. Most recently, I think just a few months ago, if I'm not correct, Jim, they completed a multi-tenant retail building anchored by Starbucks and also with an Outback restaurant parcel that now the community is enjoying. Next. This is the previously mentioned One Daytona community where Prime Group has developed an Autograph by Marriott Hotel, a Fairfield Inn and Suites, a multifamily community of 250 apartments, and now a phase 2 that we're currently working on that will take that community to over 500 apartments. And that concludes it for my presentation, Jim. I don't know if you have anything to add.
Good afternoon. This is Jim Dupre with Prime Group. Very happy to be speaking to you all again. As I expressed in my letter of interest, we're very interested in giving comments on some of these things that were presented. And there is some flexibility. So since it is a workshop, then we look forward to your comments and we will answer any questions. What I would like to say about Prime Group is that we have circulated our corporate brochure before, so I won't elaborate too much on everything we've done, but I do want to tell you, I want to emphasize, it's a very well-capitalized company. It's been operating for over 30 years as a private company. So a philosophy of the company is to have long-term hold philosophy on the assets that are developed. There's been no project in recent years that has been sold, so we're not a merchant builder. We build and we hold. And to expand on what Meyer was saying earlier about our full integration within the company, we're our own general contractor. We have architecture in-house. We have estimating, we have purchasing, we have pre-construction, we have accounting, we have interior design, and we manage in-house. And our current experience in these three asset classes is that we projects are on stage. We got about 1,500 apartments coming out of the ground. We've got various hotels in development. 2 are about to be open for business next month. We got a full service Hilton in Aventura, Florida. And then we're about to open a mixed use project just north of downtown Fort Lauderdale. That's gonna have a Marriott courtyard with a rooftop pool and bar, 337 apartments. There's a little bit more dense there because it's close to downtown. These are 15-story towers. Parking structure, 7 stories. And then on the first floor, retail with an additional retail next to it. And as far as what we did in One Daytona, which was a partnership with NASCAR, we did almost everything. They put up the land. That includes approximately 300,000 square feet of retail. So we have, I would say, projects that you were welcome to look at, and we'd be happy to show you around as far as that. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to go ahead and start the process. I'm going to start with Councilmember Saraki.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I don't have any questions.
Very good. Councilmember Norris?
I do. I understand your statement that you wanted to minimize the parking garage so you have more street parking. Would you be open, personally, 203, plus or minus 203 surface parking spaces?
Hear Councilmember Norris at all?
Vaguely, if you.
I'll take my mask off.
Please.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I had a
No,
feeling. Go
that's
ahead,
good.
start
That's-
again.
Okay, sorry about that, I had my mask on. So I had said that I understand your desire to minimize the parking garage and have more street parking. Personally, I think it's an awful lot of street parking, so my question for you would be, would you be open to more parking in the parking garage and less street parking?
I don't think we'd necessarily be opposed to that. However, the single loaded corridor conditions adjacent to a parking garage are not necessarily the most desirable in our opinion. And it's also very costly to develop that when you could develop a double loaded corridor and apartments that have views to open spaces. The parking areas can be minimized, and the idea is that those interior streets in large part would be paver finished streets. They wouldn't be asphalt, so they really would become an integral part of that open space. They don't have to feel like an asphalt street.
Okay, my second question would be, thank you. And my second question would be, I don't see commercial and retail. Are you envisioning the commercial and retail space on the bottom of the apartments, or is that not in this plan? Is it just an apartment community and a hotel? The hotel's beautiful.
At this point, really the primary components of the project are the hotel and the residential. The hotel itself on the ground floor in the slide you're looking at, where you see the word arrival and hotel, basically to the left of that spine would be all of the public areas of the hotel, which would contain a restaurant, potentially a coffee shop, and all that would have exterior seating, which would be activated by the pool area. And to the right of that spine would be meeting spaces that would also activate that general area. If we were to incorporate retail, I think, I don't want to misspeak, Jim, but it would be somewhat limited given the current circumstances, and for the foreseeable future, we think that's going to be the case. But we've contemplated that along Washington Avenue, where you have the arrival area of the apartment building that turns its leg upward, if you will, along Washington Avenue. We think that as retail can help activate that main entrance of the project and play off quite well with the hotel. And having said that too, the amenities for the project, for the residential component, would really be the entire spine of the main building at the center of the site along State Street. So you would have your leasing center, your clubhouse, your fitness, potentially a coffee shop, a co-working space. All of that would be developed along State Street, really facing State Street and the apartment courtyard and pool area.
Thank you very much.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mary. Do you have an estimated cost for this project at this time?
Yes, we have preliminary costs. Obviously, we have to understand exactly what the valuation is. We understand there's an appraisal and all that. But to give you just a general idea, we think the apartment component is going to end up costing approximately, including its designated structural parking, approximately $50 million, and the hotel about $30 million with the rooftop bar and restaurant.
Okay. And the area behind City Hall, where you have the yellowed portions and the sort of additional parking, would that parking, you would build that parking and then sort of give it back to the city, or tell me how that.
Right now, in terms of design, what we were just thinking out loud, if you will, and it's open to conversation, is we felt that it would be very beneficial to the existing City Hall venue to have easily accessible surface parking around it, and the creation of a smaller City Hall park there. But obviously, we're open to, and it could easily, that City Hall park could be enlarged. There's plenty of surface parking there. As far as who would, sort of what cost, Jim, I don't know that, we're ready to.
It's something we need to discuss with
Okay.
with the designated party, I guess the city manager.
Yes. Yes. Okay, that's my two. Go ahead.
Councilmember Knapp?
Thank you, Mayor. Looking at your, the different angles of your massing studies, I noticed what looked to be some type of orange connecting bar between the eastern and western buildings. Is that going to be some kind of elevated skywalk, or what might that be?
Yeah, that's sort of what we're envisioning as something that could connect in one of the upper floors, the residential buildings, but at the same time really create an archway feature to accentuate that mainly residential entrance to the community.
Okay, and number two, repeating the question from the last group, who's going to retain, or how's the ownership breakdown of the garage going to go? What do you envision there?
Like I said earlier, we don't sell, we hold for the long term. So we would be continuing to manage this for the foreseeable future.
I think they're asking particularly about the parking garage.
Okay, if depending on what the needs are or the requirements from the city, then we can work out. It's either I would imagine some kind of lease structure if you want additional structured parking. We have capability, obviously, going up one more floor if you wanted to, right, Mayor? So then all that can be worked out.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. I do have two questions. One, would you guys have an appetite in just doing the hotel?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Would you have an appetite in just doing the hotel?
I don't know, Jim, that would be
At this time, it's not something that we had contemplated, because we always thought that by being able to do both, then we can have synergy between the two, especially with this, by looking at this site plan. Where we've seen other plans in the past where they designate some parcel for the hotel, but then it doesn't work in many ways.
From our perspective, from a design perspective, in terms of the hotel itself, it would have to be a different shaped parcel, at least at the size of what we're showing in our site plan, for it to have the right visibility the right operational functions and proximity to the parking garage, as well as dedicated access to the garage, which we have.
All right, you know what, then I don't have a second question. All right, Councilmember Saraki?
Glad you asked that question, because I was gonna ask it, so thank you, Mayor.
All right, that it?
That's it.
Councilmember Norris?
I have no more questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Vice Mayor?
I have no more questions, only comments. Thank you.
Councilmember Knapp?
Let's go
You're
to
good. All
comments.
right, let's move to, thank you, gentlemen. At this time, we'll go ahead and go to comments and provide any feedback. And I will start with Councilmember Norris.
Okay, I'm just gonna be straight up honest. It doesn't tick all the boxes of having, anything for our residents of Oldsmar, citizen residents. To me, this is an apartment community with a lot of surface parking and a parking garage. So, no offense, but it's not what I envisioned or what we envisioned. So I love the Art Ovation Hotel though, so I'm glad you asked that question because that would have been perfect. So I really don't have any other, there's no commercial, there's no retail, park space, fountain, yeah, all that.
Councilmember Saraki?
Aunt Linda just mentioned most of the stuff I wanted to comment on, Mayor, but I really like the Woodfield project a little bit better. Sorry, I like the design and the concept, and I have to agree with Linda. I don't really want that to be an entire apartment complex. And Prime Group, if you can hear me, please do the hotel. I love your hotel. That's all I have, Mayor.
All right, Councilmember Knapp?
I'm gonna sound like an echo chamber, but to use your words, or use the term, I've just kind of, biggest concern is a lack of activation along State Street, given that that's kind of what we envision as a main corridor, as we hope that the downtown continues to grow all the way down to St. Pete Drive and turn onto St. Pete Drive. So, you know, that's definitely my biggest concern, is the lack of, or really a lack of retail, even though other projects were mentioned with retail. So I'm kind of, don't know why we didn't see much of any here.
Very good. Vice Mayor?
Similar concerns, it's, and I get that it's a balance. I get that, okay, we either, have a parking garage and it's wrapped in a whole bunch of stuff that ticks all the boxes, but then we don't have as much green space. We have what Dan called a very large project where, okay, that's a lot to swallow. We're trying to fit this piece on a piece of land, or, kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum, we have, lots of open green spaces, definitely surface parking, but it's not this large structure. I really do feel like we made an investment in the property next to City Hall specifically, not so much the library, but for the City Hall property, I feel like we did invest in it and make a promise to our citizens to create a space that involves everyone. And while a lot of people would get a lot of enjoyment out of having an apartment complex there and living there and enjoying the amenities that surround it, I feel like there needed to be a little bit more commercial space for me. I think that also makes it a nice transition from the existing commercial on the opposite side of State Street, and kind of creates that main street, that downtown Main Street. And I was looking for a little bit more commercial as well, as folks had mentioned. And it is tough because, to me, I see, in the Woodfield presentation, that is a big building. That is a very large enclosed parking garage that it's a lot to swallow. But I do think that the design elements, kind of the setback idea, deals with that nicely. I do have a problem putting surface parking in a whole lot of apartments next to City Hall that doesn't give our residents back what I feel we invested in. I hope that makes sense.
Very well. All right, I'll share my comments. I'll be brief, but I echo the sentiment. I mean, the goal of this entire project is to build a walkable downtown. It's not to purely get additional living spaces available. And I'm disappointed. I love the Prime Group and the folks there. Clearly, the change in the market has changed strategy, and so I respect that. But I do believe we have stuff to consider, and it took us 20 years to buy all the property And we probably could have sold it a long time ago if we were just interested in putting apartments there, you know, I mean, not to, I don't mean to be short. I absolutely love some of the work that Prime Group does on hotels, but I also respect that that may not be a good fit for them. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and move on. That's it, that's where we're at. It's an opportunity to have given some feedback. I think, I hope it was beneficial to everybody involved. And so, you know, the next step of this would be for the presenters to take our feedback, take it back to the shop, talk it over, make whatever final changes they would do to a final proposal, have that proposal go back to the city manager, at which point they vet it, it comes to us, and we say, hey, we like this, we don't like this. We're not gonna get into the design part at that point, other than, you know, the debate of it. And say, hey, go make a deal with this person. Go bring us a deal that's good for the citizens and the people of Oldsmar. I'm gonna remind our team up here, and this is for our council, because I don't want us to reinvent the wheel, right? And it's one of the reasons I believe that we don't have a downtown right now. And that is, you know, we've gone through a process, and I recognize there's new people on council from that process, but March will make it 2 years since we started working on this effort, right? That's not that long ago. It's not like we're working with a concept plan that was done 10 years ago that we're having to swallow. We've been through the concept plan as a council, getting input from citizens throughout that process, right? So I'm not quick to abandon that concept plan. And I say that in part because of the hotel, because that's a big selling point to our citizens. It really has been. And so we've gone through that, starting over to say, well, let's change this, change that. You know, we always will be flexible, and there'll be new people on here before we're done, right? And I recognize that, but keep in mind that we have been through this process with our citizens, and starting over is just that, starting over, which your mayor's not a big fan of. So, and I don't think anybody else is, quite frankly. It's like, hey, no more promises, deliver, right? Enough with the labor, give me the baby. And that's kind of where we're at, all right? So, hey, one other thing before we adjourn, and I'm gonna apologize to staff because I don't know if we actually nailed this down, but you know what we've never done as a group, this council, we've not had our group pictures, and that's because of COVID. If you'll recall, when the board changed, we couldn't do the pictures and all that other stuff because of social distancing, and so we came up with an idea to maybe use the stairs out back where we can social distance. It would be a different type of picture, but it would nevertheless be one for prosperity. All right?
Yes.
All right, anything else? Anything for the good of the order? All right, since you're ready to adjourn, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Come on.
I have a motion, do I have a second? It doesn't require a vote.